welcome you into the Lootpress Sports Lowdown. I'm the sports editor at Lootpress, Tyler Jackson, joined as always by sports writer for Lootpress, Rusty Udy. We got a great show on tap today. Rusty, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I know we've kind of joked lately about being in the twilight zone, but I think we are flat, full-fledged in it now.
Yeah, it's funny because we've gotten through a couple state championships for golf and for soccer, and now it's like these last two hurdles for volleyball and football are who knows what's going to happen, but we'll go ahead and break all that down here in a moment. But the first thing I do want to start off with soccer because we had the hometown team won a state championship, first time in 14 years. Made good. We talked about it all season. They had a really good season. They beat some really good teams, and then I can't say that I'm the biggest soccer historian on the state, but it'd be hard to find two more exciting state tournament victories than what we just had. And obviously the team we're talking about is Beckley. They won the Class AAA state championship. Big win on Thursday in the semifinal against Wheeling Park, and then they ended up beating Hurricane 2. So the two games that they lost all season, they ended up avenging them in the state tournament. So really interesting on how it all worked. You were on the ground for both of those games. I got a chance to watch the video of them. Just really exciting. I kind of want to start off with your perspective, getting to see all this, because now this is the second state championship soccer team that you covered. Greenbrier East 2 years ago, and now Beckley. And this is a team that you documented all season long. It just really, what a way to finish the season for them.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with these teams. Kind of stepping it up since I've kind of got into the soccer arena now, and I kind of wish my old buddy Dan Stillwell was here so I could poke at him just a little bit. Because I jump on the scene. We got 2 state championships in 3 years now, I guess.
Yeah.
And, but no, I'm just. It was absolutely. I've really. Since I've started covering soccer, become a really big soccer fan, and man, you couldn't ask for anything more exciting than the two matches that I saw. Beckley was up 2-0 in the semifinal against Wheeling Park, looked to be cruising, and they had used so much energy defensively against Park, who's a really, really good team, and they average 4 or 5 goals a game, and Park scores on kind of not a fluke play, but a little bit of a play Beckley got into disarray a little bit, and then they hit one with 3 minutes to go. So you're thinking, wow, we watched enough sports to where things turn on you like that. It's incredibly hard to right the ship after that. And they survived the first overtime period and got into the second overtime period, and it was kind of we were all really kind of settled in. Okay, looks like we're going to go to kicks from the mark, and. Man, AJ Bishop just had a totally different perspective on things, and he kind of takes control. I mean, it was 3 defenders from Park, right out there just outside the 18 box, and he took control of it, kicks us over to Michael Faya, and Michael with a perfect through ball inside, and then it was ironic that as good as the keeper is from Wheeling Park, he beat him between his legs. He really felt like that was his only shot. He didn't feel like he had anything the other way the angles were, and he beat him right through the 5 holes, they say in hockey. But, it was just an incredible emotional game, physical game, a lot of exertion. If it would have been under the old method where Beckley would have had to play the next day, just not sure they could have handled that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. And Steve even said that it was a massive situation for them to be able to rest a day and then play Saturday. But even in the game on Saturday, you could see in the second half that Beckley's legs were heavy. They were struggling, and it really looked like that game was going to OT. There was no doubt about it. And again, Mr. Bishop with a heads-up play, and he gets the ball on the side, throws it in, gets it right back, and man, you can watch that video 1,000 times, and that pass is just unbelievable the way he curls that in. And I kind of was watching it from the box, and when he kicked it, I could see Hagan coming through, Hagan Hall, and I'm like, that keeper's in trouble.
Yeah, that's their shot.
Hagan's tough, and they set it up perfect. It went, Hagan's actually left-footed, set it right on his left foot, and he hit it far post. And man, you're talking about an absolute shocking, euphoric, eruption. I mean, that even when Adam Seams hit that one, for Greenbrier East to put them up, it was like triple this. I mean, it was just a crazy, outburst. And I tell you, I haven't seen much like that in sports. Not a 2 game stretch like that back to back. That was incredible.
Yeah, and it's and Greenbrier East championship run 2 years ago was exciting. I think they scored the winning goal in the 70th minute of the first game, and I think it was like the 77th minute or so of the state championship game to take it. But yeah, it's just the thing that goes through my play is great situational awareness. 15 seconds, you're not worried about the clock, but you get it in a very quick, timely manner,
Right.
And then you're on the fly. Like you guys they just know what to do in that moment. It's just really great, and I thought just overall a really good job coaching by Coach Steve Larraba and Beckley's defense, and you'd expect it in a state championship. They were really tested in that defensive
Very
third,
much so. Yeah,
and Hurricane did a really good job of putting some pressure on them.
Exactly.
But they never folded it. And like you talked about, coming from the Wheeling Park game to where you have to expend so much defensive effort to keep McLeod off the board and go into overtime, and then to turn back around, less than 48 hours later and do it again. It's just really just an incredible feat. Like you said, it's one of those things. It doesn't matter what sport you're playing in. Like that is, it's something you're not going to see much of ever again.
It's really kind of amazing too, is how quick those kids process stuff. Because, and I know it's because they play and they've done it forever. But AJ told me pretty much he threw that ball in with the full intention of getting it back and making that play. I mean, he already had this drawn up in his mind when he's getting the ball from the ball boy, so that was pretty amazing. Now, he did say they had a similar incident, in the South Charleston game, but, I guess the thing with Beckley, too, is like they were just used to these situations. They'd been in them so many times, and, Steve has talked all year about the schedule that they play and how tough it is, and, I think that made the difference because, Hurricane had really not been in these kind of late game situations, and a lot of times you can't, your schedule's your schedule, and they play in the MSAC, and, so you're kind of committed to certain things there, where Beckley was really grinding it right to the very, you're playing Wheeling Park on the very last weekend of the state tournament, the regular season, with Tuesday being a sectional matchup. So, and, we've also talked about Region 3 being so brutal. It's, not only did they avenge the two regular season losses, but, we've talked about it before, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, George Washington was kind of the postseason boogeyman. They had to beat them too. And Steve told me, he gave me a really interesting quote after that match, because that was kind of my thinking is a little bit. It's like, are you wanting to just go in there and beat GW so you can say, man, we beat GW? And he said, it really wasn't that. It really didn't matter what the jersey on the other side said. They were there to take care of business, to win the match, whoever they played. And so, they kind of kept that focus of, we're just here to win the match. It's not who we're playing. And I think that played out pretty good for them.
It's always fun to do it on your own venue. I do want to shift to, and we've been on the other side of this because we do all-state teams. And I don't want to harp too much on it because the Sports Writers Association no longer does soccer all-state teams, but the Coaches Association does. And I thought Coach Larraba handled it with class. But man, you look at those lists, and it kind of feels like a joke. And the one thing, whenever we get blowback on our all-state list, regardless of the sport, somebody's like, well, this kid should have been here. My thing's always, okay, this kid may have deserved to be a first-team all-stater, but who are you taking off of this?
Right.
When I look at that list and I see Kobe Dillon as honorable mention, and you mentioned Jackson Gray and everything like that, it's hard to legitimize a list like that, and it impacts you. And again, I'm aware of the position of the Sports Writers Association where, things are the way they are, so we don't really have lists, and, it does impact what we can realistically say about it. But to me, it's just really hard to look at that list and see, Beckley played an elite schedule. They play an elite schedule every year. Right. They played Wheeling Park. They played Hurricane.
You're not going to have games scoring 9-10 goals.
Yeah, they beat GW twice. They did all of this, and then it kind of, whether or not you want to be petty, I don't know if that's what it is with the Coaches Association with this list in particular, but when you do stuff like that, it just really harms your credibility when it comes to creating these lists. It's hard to legitimize it.
Yeah, and you're right. I'll preface it with, there's a lot of reason why the sports writers don't do one, because soccer's hard. I mean, it's hard to quantify things. Defenders, it's really hard to quantify. And, we don't have a lot of sports writers that are covering soccer throughout the state. I mean, we get a good bit of coverage in this area, but, we don't see much as far as the others. Now, I have seen some of the teams that's coming down here, but, I mean, any list that I see that doesn't have Kobe Dillon on the first team, Jackson Gray. I mean, I watched that kid play, Trez McLeod, who is a legitimate player of the year. And, Jackson did a really good job on him. So, you've got to have kids like that on your first team. You just have to. I mean, that's just, I don't agree with a lot of these lists that, balance is, if the kid's the best, the kid's the best. And that's the way it is. And Kobe Dillon's just a straight up dog. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
He scored in every postseason game for Beckley.
Yeah, so even if you take out like the state tournament games, like he did a lot of work in sectionals and regionals. Throughout the regular season, he was very good. He had 2 goals against Greenbrier East in the regular season matchup. So he showed out. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. And you talk about this. This is after rebound. I think they were 0-2-1 at the start or something, or
0-1-2 maybe.
Yeah, I don't think they won their first game until the Oak Hill game when they exploded for 7 goals in that one. But just everything that kind of quantifies it, the schedule, the state championship.
Beckley's a little hard too, because we've sat in the basketball meetings. Beckley's hard in basketball a lot of times because you have 3 really good players, but they're all only scoring like 12, 13 points a game. But that's really kind of what you want. And Beckley's a lot like that. I mean, they got a broad base as far as their scoring goes. I mean, Hagen Hall, Ali Fagali. I mean, they just got a bunch of kids that can score. I mean, AJ Bishop. At least he was on there, which made some sense. But you're right. I mean, we don't want to harp on things too much, but there are glaring errors, and Kobe Dillon's a glaring error. I mean, I kept looking down that list. I'm like, where's Kobe? I'm like, it is what it is, and it's I guess the bottom line is they're holding a state championship trophy, and that's really what they're concerned about. So
yeah, that's a thing that lasts forever.
Exactly.
Beckley's not
that's
hanging.
exactly what Kobe said. They can't take it away from us now.
Yeah, it's you go through Beckley, and it's because they have so many first team All-Stayers, but they're usually not hanging pictures of just first team All-Stayers. They're hanging team championship pictures, and that thing's going to be there forever.
City of Champions for a reason.
Yeah. So next thing we kind of move on to is the volleyball madness. For those of you that aren't following, we'll try to break it down.
The 2 or 1 of you.
Yeah. So AA, AAA, and Quad A will all be played in the state tournament this week per normal. Single A will not. Single A will be postponed indefinitely pending a court hearing on Tuesday morning at 8. So you'll probably be hearing this a little bit after that. I would be extremely surprised if so here's what happened. Tyler Consolidated, I believe at the start of sectional play was granted, or around the end of sectional play was granted an injunction. Tyler Consolidated is a AA school in volleyball, and I think in football they're single A, which is why they filed the injunction to get moved down. I believe they're also in the same region as Oak Glen or Philip. I believe it's Oak Glen or Philip Barber.
One of the 2 big
one of the teams you do not want to be in a region with, and. So Tyler Consolidated got an injunction to move down. I think St. Mary's may have gotten an injunction too.
And I think that's who they would have played in the regional co-final or something like that. I mean, because they would have got a shot to get this title.
But it's just really weird that these injunctions are granted now at this point, as opposed to, it may not have been as much of a fuss if you had done it, to start the season. It's like, all right, now football. So then the postseason starts, and then we suddenly get these injunctions. Yep. Well, now it becomes St. Mary's is the number 1 overall seed, correct?
8.
Okay, 8. All right, St. Mary's is the 8th seed, and East Hardy is the 1 seed, correct? Right. So East Hardy has filed an injunction to have Tyler Consolidated. So there's an 8-9 seed between St. Mary's and Tyler Consolidated. It's supposed to take place before the actual state tournament begins. It'd be the morning of. They'd have that match, and then whoever won would get the 8th seed, and they'd play East Hardy, the 1 seed. East Hardy filed an injunction because Tyler Consolidated did not win a regional championship. And here's the story behind that. Tyler Consolidated won the sectional championship to beat I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was St. Mary's. But they beat them, and they were supposed to go on and play Trinity. Well, Trinity filed an injunction to play the team that Tyler Consolidated beat. So that team ended up beating St. Mary's, ended up beating Trinity and got in. So Tyler Consolidated was basically left without a regional game to play and moved on to got the Super Sim, skipped past regionals and just play this play-in game in the state tournament. So now East Hardy has filed the injunction, and from what we were told by multiple people, other Class A schools were encouraged to also file an injunction against Tyler Consolidated to have them removed. So we're at this point right now where all of it's in disarray because you have competing injunctions to see what's going to happen, and nobody knows exactly what. We'll go up to the Supreme Court of the state to be ruled upon. I think that's probably the only thing that happens unless something happens tomorrow where the Hardy County Circuit Court's like, we're going to throw this injunction out. We don't agree with it. But yeah, to me, the thing that stands out more than anything is it just comes off as a poor move. I don't want to say weak, but the timing of it comes off as a weak move. If you're going to do it, go ahead and do it before the season, and then it probably wouldn't be as much of a big deal. I think sequencing is so much of the problem with where we are right now with a lot of these issues, and we'll get into it with football too. If you do these things early, if you file the injunction early, all right,
if it's a problem now, it's a problem back then.
Yeah, exactly. You just it felt like you hedged your bets a little bit. And I don't know the exact philosophy from Tyler Consolidated, but those are the outside optics.
I can help you with it.
Yeah.
Double A's a beast.
Yeah. we talked about it. Oakland and Phillip Barber are the two teams that not only would they probably have a chance to win Double A this year, they are the last three state champions in the old Double A, so they could probably win Triple A as well, which is those old teams.
They would definitely contend in Triple A.
Yeah.
Because, we've seen James Monroe play Shady pretty much even, and it's been a really good battle. James Monroe, I'm pretty sure, beat Herbert Hoover, too. And Hoover's the 2 in Triple A. So that's the big issue. And, I understand where East Hardy's coming from, okay, because East Hardy's the number 1 overall seed. They were supposed to play St. Mary's, which is a true 8th seed. And that's the way it's set up. That's what you earn as a 1 seed. You get to play that. Well, Tyler Consolidated was number 7 in Double A. So they're good. They're real good. So you drop them down, and if it would have been ranked with the single A schools, I can't imagine they would be an 8th seed in the single A schools. I mean, I'm thinking up around 3, 4, maybe 2. I don't know. I mean, I don't think West and them have played, but it would be around the Greenbrier West level that we would have, Tyler Consolidated in there. So, East Hardy's like, wait a minute, we're getting the raw end of this deal, and so that's where a lot of this came from, and. And like I say, if Tyler Consolidate hadn't been any good, it probably wouldn't matter. But they are good, and would have had a shot in Double A. But now it's just a mess, and I feel bad for the single A kids. Because they worked for this, and they're going to
probably won't get to play in the Coliseum.
No, I can't see it happening in the Coliseum. I really can't. Yeah. And where that's going to be is who knows when it's going to be. I mean, we are basically. Girls basketball starts today. Yeah. So most of these girls play basketball as well. I know James
especially in single A.
Greenbrier West, exactly. So how do you prepare? You sit and wait after you play. I mean, volleyball is momentum, big time momentum. And so you're ready to go, you're ready to play, and I was like, no, you can't play. And so what do you do for the next 2 weeks if it's 2 weeks away? Because it doesn't seem like this is a thing that's going to happen.
And do you get rushed up the ladder to the Supreme Court that quickly?
Right.
Yeah, that's our question. Yeah.
And that's just an absolute shame that this thing has developed like this, and that's where we all get just a little bit angry and a little bit frustrated, is because it could have been handled months ago. And the schools want to jump in at the last minute. It's like feeling like they can't win, so let's go to another class where we think we can win.
Yeah.
That's bottom line.
And I thought I had seen somewhere, somebody from Tyler was like, we filed this injunction earlier. So why was it just now granted?
Right.
That's the issue. That's the sequencing. If it had been done and granted back in August or early September, fine. People would still have raw feelings about it, but at least you're not throwing off the entire state. And I understand doing that from the perspective of, you got to do what's best for your kids and things like that. But I also think, you're putting your kids in the line of fire. Everybody in the state is looking at Tyler Consolidated right now. There's some people that are probably looking at East Hardy. It's like, well, you guys are starting this. But, if you're looking at it from a neutral perspective, Tyler Consolidated is who everyone kind of feels is responsible for this mess. And, I see people blaming the SSAC, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Right.
But this isn't their fault. You think they want this? They booked
Exactly.
these venues out. Like, now it's, these kids are probably likely going to be robbed of that experience of playing in the Coliseum, winning in the Coliseum. It's just tough. And just the timing of it is, I just don't think that Tyler Consolidated is going to garner a lot of favor around the state.
Because, volleyball is not like football. Football, we had like the last minute change of classes, points, and all that stuff caused a lot of confusion through the year. And as it played out through the season, we saw how that confusion affected playoff bursts and different things like that. Volleyball has been set in stone since the season started. Mm-hmm. So if you had a beef, it should have been right there. And you start filing, and we want changes made right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go ahead and we'll see what happens there. We talked about James Monroe, Shady Spring, and Beckley, and Wyoming East. We'll all get opportunities to play for state championships, and we'll recap all of that. But, yeah, it's just it really is a mess.
It's an unfortunate mess.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go ahead and move on to football, recap just a couple games that we had this past week. I had two. I had James Monroe at Bluefield, and I had Parkersburg South at Princeton. Then we also had Beckley, GW. Those are the three we're going to talk about. I guess I'll start off with the most exciting or controversial game, and that was Princeton at Parkersburg South.
Controversy is the word of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So for this one, Princeton led 21-6. Then Parkersburg South returned a fumble for a touchdown, and then just kind of started to run away with the game at that point. They led by 19 points heading into the fourth quarter. Princeton comes back. They win on the final play of the game. That's a Hail Mary, 29-yard Hail Mary touchdown pass, where it was ruled there was simultaneous possession, and by rule that always goes to the offensive player. You can go back to the Hail Mary, I think it was 12 years ago now, between Green Bay and Seattle on Monday Night Football. Right. That was the ruling there, simultaneous possession. So anybody, you should be familiar with the term just from that. It applies to high school as well. Well, it was ruled that Princeton had simultaneous possession. The touchdown tied the game, and the ensuing PAT won the game, so they won 49-48. Ended up with the number one seed in Class AAA. And I know a lot of focus is on that, and I said it in my Deep Post column this week. To me, that was like the third most important thing that happened in that game. The first one, I think, for Princeton is obviously Markel Lowe. Is he healthy? Because he ended up, the second play from scrimmage, he caught a pass, and he got knocked out of bounds, and he was out for the rest of the game. Tried to get back in, and coaches wouldn't let him, and I understand exactly why. You need him for a playoff run regardless.
Bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second big thing is Parkersburg South had a 19-point lead no matter how you slice it. I know people, I said it last week when we had Oak Hill Beckley with the offsides call. Officiating doesn't decide a game. There are 130 plays, I believe, in that game that were ran. So that's the opportunity there. If you're Parkersburg South, I think you had 13 or so plays on offense there in the fourth quarter, and you couldn't score or you couldn't run off enough clock. Princeton, they got them to third down, I think 3 or 4 times, and they got them to a fourth down and couldn't get them off the field. And you gave up 3 touchdown drives. That's just when you cut it down, that's exactly what it is. And I think that's what you have to focus on more than anything. The outcome, controversy aside, it's not going to be overturned no matter what side you look at it. And you have to always control the things that you can control, and you can control not giving up 19 points.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. That was my feeling through it all, was control what you can control. And they not only did they give up the play, but they played the play wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they clearly played the Hail Mary wrong.
And I even pointed that out. Like, I asked other coaches too. I said, "How do you play this? How do you teach it specifically?" And they had said, "Bat it down." And some of them even go through the method. Okay, we blitz on it. We send pressure so that way they don't have an opportunity to set things up.
Yep.
But, it kind of came into focus for those that watch the NFL, the Commanders and Bears Hail Mary. Exactly. There was an article that resurfaced that I linked from 8 years ago where Hail Mary, there's actually, it's not random. There is a whole defense. There are a bunch of teaching points to it, and you're always supposed to bat the ball down. Yep. And Parkersburg South tried to intercept it. It's very clear on the video. There's just a lot of execution errors, and to me, that very much sort of summed it up. And with the video and pictures that we saw, it did look like Belcher at least got an arm in there to argue simultaneous possession before the Parkersburg South defensive player even came down. and one arm, like I'm not seeing any rule that indicates, okay, 2 arms equals 1. Like if you have possession, you can catch a ball with one hand or one arm. Like we see it every week at some level.
Yeah.
So to me, it comes down to execution. And obviously for Parkersburg South, you hate to lose the game that way. And I'm not being a Princeton apologist in saying this. These are just kind of the way that I saw it.
Yeah, and then, that's the whole point of why you bat it down is there's 2 bad things that can happen. You tip it, they catch the ball, and that's how Washington won over Chicago. Then you got simultaneous possession, and you really, the official really could not make a call to say
that made it worse.
Yeah.
Yes, I think to me that's really what made it bad. It's because they waited so long to make a call, and the longer it went on, I was like, this is going to be a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to call this incomplete if they're waiting this long.
Yep.
And the issue is not clarifying who caught it, because there's some argument as to whether Jennings caught it. And you see in the video, Jennings is standing behind them while they're on the ground. Then he gets in the pile and fights and comes away with it at the end. But there's absolutely no way by rule that he would have been able to score that touchdown.
Right.
So I completely understand the frustration there. I think that, and I hate to rail on the official in that, I think that they kind of made the situation worse a little bit by not calling it, and clarifying it. They had the mics, they did it. Especially this crew in particular, every time they called a false start, they were like, illegal procedure, false start. So they were very specific. I think that was their opportunity one way or another to go ahead and call it and clarify it. But I think like the length of it and just kind of how it was handled really made it sore, because even now there's still no exact clarification officially who caught it. I wrote in and I gave it to Belcher because by rule there's nobody else that could have caught it.
Right. And a lot of times with the officials, I think they get surprised by what they're looking at. They don't. I mean, I know, and even in the pro game, sometimes they're like, "Oh my gosh, this actually happened." How do I do with it? So I think that was part of it. But it's real simple for me. I mean, when you put yourself in those kind of situations, crazy things will happen, and you can get angry about the play. Or you can look and say, okay, well, we did this wrong. We need to fix it this way. And I think it's a lot of. To me, it's kind of funny when you read the comments and arguments and different things like that. And, they're all slanted to, I wanted Princeton to lose, or I wanted Princeton to win. And that's kind of how it always works with these things. And you just have to kind of look at it, objectively as best you can. It was a crazy play. It was a wild ending, but it just wasn't played right. And you gave Princeton an opportunity, and they cashed in.
I think the irony in all of it is everyone saying home cooking for Princeton. And I've been very vocal about it. Like Princeton is like, they are the most penalized team in the area and probably one of the most in the state. They're right there with Fairmont Senior. So it's not like, it's kind of funny that it's like, oh, home cooking whenever officials draw them and they're like, oh God, now we're going to be here for 3.5 hours. And that was a 7:30 kick. It's funny because it's almost like a funny bit. Princeton, I told you this, they got flagged for 19 yards and penalties before they even took the field. The game was delayed. It was supposed to start off at 7:30. It was supposed to start at 7. Right. Parkersburg South couldn't get there until 7:30. And they were still doing senior night stuff past 7:30. The captains came to the field and met and did the coin toss and everything while they were doing senior night stuff. So Princeton gets a delay game flag there. Then on the kickoff, I think there's a personal foul and sportsmanlike conduct. So they lose 14 yards on half the distance to the goal. So before you even take a snap, there's 19 yards, which again is like kind of funny with the way that we've been following Princeton talking about the penalties. Yeah, it's like you really can't avoid it. So it's pretty rich to me that there's the home cooking talk about it, and then it's like Princeton's not actually done itself any favors or done any favors by officiating for the most part.
I mean, there's no doubt about it that you're a lot faster at writing and doing stuff like that than me. I'm pretty sure I was home and done my story and had it in the system before you even started.
Yeah, because I got home, I think it was around 12 or so, because we were waiting for all that to get sorted out, and then these teams, they love to throw the ball, and then when you're scoring almost 100 points, you have all these stoppages and all that, and it's a lot. But
it's a nightmare.
Yeah. But it's crazy. One other thing that stands out again, get Markel Lowe healthy because they need him to tie everything together. They can't win a state championship without him. As a linebacker, Eli Bartley, running back for Parkersburg South, ran all over them and made it look easy. They couldn't tackle him. They couldn't bring him down. He was able to find all the cutback lanes. A really good player. That's one of the best performances I've seen all year. And I think if you have Markel Lowe in there at linebacker, he makes everybody else look good. He's it's funny because I always compare him to San Francisco 49ers players. On the offense, he reminds me of Christian McCaffrey, but on defense, kind of like their Fred Warner, like where he kind of makes everything work, and they need him to really help that thing out.
They do have a little bit of a bugaboo about that. I mean, I know the Capital Kid ran big time on him a little bit, and Oak Hill had some success on him from the things I've seen, and when you're looking at possible Bridgeport matchup later down the road, that doesn't bode well.
And then one other thing too is should they get there, and it looks. I would say that they probably will. Semifinals, Hoover likes to run the ball.
That's right,
Blake Fisher is a really good player. I think that the two kids they have there in the backfield between Dane Hatfield, quarterback, and Blake Fisher, I think those are first-team All-State players.
Right.
I genuinely do. So you have to find a way to be able to stop them. And we'll talk about all the injunction stuff later. But Princeton, if they can get Lowe healthy, if he's not entirely ready, that might benefit them. Yeah. The other game I want to move on to, James Monroe at Bluefield. Bluefield kind of left speechless after this one. James Monroe turned the ball over 4 times in the first half and came back and still beat Bluefield 28-20. Bluefield, 2 of their turnovers, a fumble recovery in the end zone for a touchdown, and a 10-yard pick six. Really gutty win for James Monroe, and Bluefield just, you could tell talking to Freddie Simon, he felt like they were the better and most talented team, but that one just didn't sit well with him because they just felt like they lost to, I don't want to say an inferior team, but a team that they were better than. But this is kind of James Monroe's mantra. This is 2 years in a row where they've come in, they've not been scared of Bluefield, and everything was on the line for them. They had to win to control their own fate to get in the playoffs, and they came into Mitchell Stadium and they lit them up, and it was again defense.
Yeah, I mean, that game was really bizarre because I watched the bigger part of it after the volleyball, and I think I tuned it in right when the pick six happened for Ryan Mann, and I'm like, well, it was, that's kind of interesting, but I knew Bluefield had already been pretty successful, and it seemed like James Monroe was having the same kind of bugaboos with turning the ball over, and that might cost them the game. And then it's almost like one of those games you watch and you're like, what did I just watch? I mean, but you're right. Credit to James Monroe. I mean, their pretty much season was on the line. I mean, they didn't have any. It was win or go home, and I can't count many people that had James Monroe beating Bluefield at Bluefield. That was big. That was real big.
And one thing I want to point out about their defense, I think Max Simpson had 9 rushes or so or whatever. Those weren't designed rushes. Those were rushes I have to scramble out of the pocket, and then James Monroe had 5 sacks. So the way I'm looking at this, they got and pressured Simpson 14 times on that game. Yeah. And you could even that doesn't even account for the times that he would technically be pressured on throws and things like that. But those runs weren't designed; those runs were scrambles. Right. So James Monroe's defense, this was just another one of those hallmark performances, and they'll be put to the test whenever they play. Depending on how things go.
Right.
But just the ability to get to Simpson. Another thing for Bluefield, they also lost Willis Wilson, their leading offensive player, yards from scrimmage. I think he's their leading receiver and rusher. He had his ankle iced at the second half of the game. That's another team that they could probably benefit if things do get pushed back a week. But it's.
It was a tough draw for them too now because the way this is all played out, that loss is pretty much going to cost them a home field game, and they have to go to Scott.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, Scott is not your regular 8 seed. That is a good team.
That's a good football team,
Yeah, they kind of.
I guarantee you Frankfurt's probably a little bit, oh boy.
Yeah.
If they can get past Bluefield, then we got them now.
It is funny because Frankfort and Scott, should they play, Frankfort actually came down to Scott and beat them 2 years ago in the quarterfinal round. So, But I want to move on to our last game of the week that we want to recap, GW Beckley. We talked about it last week. If you needed to do something, it had to be here. You had to get some confidence, and they did. I think they had 3 or 4 turnovers they forced on GW. Big stand on the 2-point conversion, and GW went for to tie the game, got the onside kick. Really just a great, resilient effort from Beckley, especially after what happened in Oak Hill the prior week. I think this is exactly what you wanted to see. We talked about it in 2021. They go up to South Charleston, they got to have it, and they get it. In GW, you get it, and now they get the playoffs regardless. But they're going back to Washington, which is where the season started. And I know that they got a lot of turnovers, but they also turned the ball over 3 times up there on interceptions.
Right.
So, I think this is a great situation for Beckley. You get some momentum, you kind of shake that monkey a little bit off your back, and now you got an opportunity to do the same exact thing you did to open your season.
Yeah, and it's what we would call a very winnable game. I mean, there's no doubt that sometimes those playoff games you think are kind of lopsided, but Beckley, to me, it's been the same MO with them. For a while now. If they don't hurt themselves, they're pretty good. I mean, they win football games, but they kind of do themselves in a little bit. And they were fortunate at the beginning of the year. They wound up going to overtime after those turnovers. But if they can, play clean and not turn the football over, there's a very good chance they can win that game and have a good shot in round 2.
Absolutely. So we're going to move on to the playoffs and kind of discuss what all is going on here. First thing that I do want to start off with, so the injunction was granted in Wood County Court, I believe it was on Friday or so, or Saturday, and the playoff ratings points were restored to their original values of what they would have been in July and in the offseason whenever all these teams schedule each other. So anybody that scheduled independents got AAA points after this injunction was granted instead of AA points that they would have gotten from September to before last week.
Right.
So basically, it got reset to where it was, and that impacted 4 teams who are now left out of the playoffs pending an injunctions that will be filed tomorrow. And those 4 teams, I believe, are Hampshire, West Side. I can't remember the other 2, but locally it impacts West Side more than anything.
Right.
Under the points before, so the points, like independents counting for AA points, for example, West Side would have been in before the injunction that was filed on Friday at the Wood County. We'll just call it the Wood County just to make it easy. The one that was granted in Wood County, West Side would have been in. They would have been, I believe, the number 16 seed to go into Frankfort.
Right.
Now that everything was restored back to the way it was intended, West Side ends up as the 17 seed on the outside. And Justin Koger, their head coach, told me they do plan on filing an injunction on Tuesday. Yep. So we'll see what happens there, because that's going to be a conflicting injunction, which, again, is the same situation we're in with volleyball, where things are pushed back. So what happens? I think the SSAC has 2 options. Let everybody in, push everything back a week, have like a first round kind of playoff and extend it around on Friday, go through it that way. And then you could do it that way. You could wait for a decision. I think that it's more likely that I don't know if they'll be able to push things through quick enough to get things started through like a Supreme Court or an arbitrator. So here's what we're going to end up doing is either you let everybody in or we wait a couple weeks to get the football playoffs started. It's tough. If you're West Side, obviously you think 7-3 should be good enough to get you in, especially when you look at the 16 seed being 3-7. Right. I think that, again, this is a problem that's been caused by the schools. I look at it, the reason that Lincoln at 3-7 is in over West Side is because straight to schedule points. Yep. And that is a remedy to help some of these teams out. We've seen it over the last couple of years. Independence at 14 gets in. Fairmont Senior at 16 gets in. They make these deep runs because they actually schedule people, they play people, they get points. And then they beat up on these teams. Yeah, it's like, all right, our path is tougher, but we're still the better teams. Right. And, it's the same thing for Bluefield. Bluefield's gone through this for 15, probably almost 20 years now.
Long time.
Yeah. So, it's done to protect those teams. And, I hate to say it this way, but those are generally the teams that matter a little bit more. You don't want a team that's capable of playing into Saturday being a 17 or 18 seed, and it almost happened with Fairmont Senior in 2021, except for Wheeling Park decided to be honorable about it. There's a COVID forfeit, but they were like, we won't accept it as a forfeit. We'll just take it as no contest. That kept Wheeling Park out of the playoffs and let Fairmont Senior get in. They go and win as the number 16 seed. So we try to avoid those situations with strength of schedule. I favor strength of schedule. Is it maybe a little bit flawed? Yeah, probably, but I favor it. I think you have to protect those teams at the top. You want to get your best teams in, give them a shot to win, and they shouldn't be punished just because local teams won't play them. We talked about it. James Monroe and Independence aren't afraid to play Bluefield. James Monroe is proven, hey, like we beat them 2 times in a row and knocked them out of the playoffs last year and got ourselves into the playoffs this year by beating Bluefield. So you kind of have to step up and accept that challenge. And Westside's schedule wasn't overly weak, I would say. AAA Shady, you lose that game. Single A Tug, who could probably be playing for a state championship. And you get Independence, who's another team in Double A that could be playing for a state championship. It's just they didn't win any of those games, and the rest of the teams that they played only gave 3 wins. Nicholas County dropped them because Nicholas County was under the presumption it was going to be AAA, and I understand that. But I wonder if this makes teams go through and look at it, provided that they survive this. If they go back and look, okay, like we need to beef up our schedules. Like we need to get these teams, these Bluefields, these Independences. We need to get all these teams back on our schedule because those points matter. And for Westside, there's a chance that depending on how the rulings go, it costs them. Yeah. And the next thing I wonder kind of about this injunction thing is, okay, say that the SSAC lets everybody in. What if one of those bottom teams after 17 seed upsets one of the top 16 seeds? Right. Then one of those teams, I wouldn't doubt it if they go file an injunction, hey, you shouldn't have been in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, right now it's just a mess. I mean, it's just really a mess. And, I don't know what the solution is going to be. Every time you think, okay, well, if we do it this way, then it creates a bunch more problems. And, I don't know. I just, again, these are things that, should have been hammered out, way before the season, and, I said at the beginning of the season that I thought the team should get the original points for the way they scheduled. I mean, they had no idea these were going to make changes. Mm-hmm. So, I thought they should have stayed that way. But, it's bad when you have it one way and then you get the injunction and then teams start getting knocked out. They're going to respond and they're going to, file back and try to save it. I thought it was bizarre it came from Wood County, of all places.
Yeah.
To me, that's just, I don't think they really had a dog in the fight, it really seemed like. I mean, maybe
just boils down, and I'm not entirely sure if it was filed in the Wood County Circuit Court or if it was one of the Board of Education for sure. It's not entirely clear to me. I haven't double checked into that. I just know that's where it was granted that. But yeah, it's just a mess.
And I don't see any way around not delaying the playoffs. At least what we would consider the normal first round. I don't see any way around it because, we got basically 8 teams now that 4 were in, got knocked out. So we got 8 teams in flux. Are we just going to have those teams play each other? And if they do play each other, like where are they going to play each other? It's different. Who gets home field advantage?
Yeah.
Play a neutral site? It's just a lot of questions and a lot of problems.
Yeah, I just really don't know how to sort through all of it. And It's tough because, Westside in particular, if the ratings points had stayed the same as they were intended to, as Westside created its schedule and Hampshire and all these other ones, you would technically still be out.
Right.
You were given a favor.
What we have right now.
Yeah, you guys all these teams were basically given a favor by all the other classes moving down essentially. Yeah. And then when it was restored to the way it was intended to be, they are on the outside, and it basically comes down to the way you made your schedule and just not being able to take care of the things.
Well, and not getting the wins at key times.
Yeah.
That's just. Your schedule kind of is what it is sometimes. But if you're a playoff team, you've got to be able to kind of win some of those games. And they had 3. In Westside's case, they had 3 good chances. To win one of those games and came up short. So, I'm with you. I like strength of schedule. I do think it needs to be looked at a little bit as far as the values and different things like that. And those are things you tweak from year to year. But I totally agree. If you can't not count strength of schedule because teams start dodging teams too much just to make it into the playoffs, and you don't have the good teams in the playoffs that should be there all along.
Yeah. Now that's going to get to the point, you wonder if the SSAC is even going to be around for next year because the legislature is going to go into session, and they're going to get involved in this. Mm-hmm. They've already talked about it. You've seen several delegates, senators discussing it. They're going to get involved in it, and we're probably going to see some sort of total overhaul. I've talked about the whole regional proposition. That's what I would do: mandate schedules. Let them take care of it that way. And I know a couple area teams are working on a proposal like that. Right. I don't know if it'll get the support just because I think some of those teams were very comfortable in it. I hate to single out Shady Spring in an example, but they finished kind of 8-2 or 7-3, and some other area coaches have mentioned it to me privately. They felt like Shady kind of gained the system a little bit in how they scheduled. Even with some of the points they got, like they just. The one game that was pointed out to me by one coach was, look at the Greenbrier East game, for example. That was the only legitimate, AAA team that they felt they played, and which I would probably argue Nicholas County, because you look at the enrollment. I think Nicholas County is probably, in that sort of AAA range.
Yeah.
But the one coach that brought up to me was like, look at Greenbrier East, for example. That's the game that they lost by 2 scores, and Greenbrier East is on the outside, and Shady didn't really feel competitive in that coach's point of view.
Right.
So people kind of look at it. They were able to get themselves into the AAA playoffs, and who knows? Maybe if they beat Oak Hill, who they're scheduled to play. But that's kind of the concern, that a lot of teams keep just doing that and getting into that system, and they put more value on getting into the playoffs instead of getting the better product and the better teams and positions they're supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, there's and this has been going on for a while. I mean, there's years back that, AAA teams, when it was just 3 classes, they would only play like 5 AAA teams and then 5, AA or whatever. And, that was a way of getting into the playoffs. Now, some of those teams, you got in and think, okay, they're going to get waxed. Well, they didn't get waxed. They actually played pretty good. But so, I guess there is some argument to the fact of just getting in to get a shot. But, I just don't, to me, it's like NASCAR winning on gas strategy. It's like, what? Just be the better team. Overall. So.
Yeah, that's it's crazy because it's one of those things that's in your control, and here's where we are. But we do have. I do want to run through the playoff matchups that we do have scheduled. Bluefield at Scott, we talked about that. James Monroe at Independence, Shady at Oak Hill, Beckley at Washington, and Meadow Bridge is on the road. I believe they have Cameron. Yeah, so that's another tough one. Bluefield at Scott, I've got the chance to see both of these teams. I think Bluefield, especially if they're not healthy, they have a tough road to hoe, just because Scott's dynamic. They have a good quarterback, they have a good running back, they have 2 good receivers. They're hard to keep in check. I think they're the type of team that's going to give Bluefield a lot of problems. Bluefield, I think, is just going to depend mostly on what they're able to do defensively. Can you force turnovers? And offensively, can you capitalize? Can you get enough points? And I'm not sure with the current state that Bluefield's in that they can, just because it seems, James Rowe coming in there and just doing a lot of what they wanted to keep them off the board. It's tough. And we talked about Scott's not a normal team. They started 0-2, and that kind of got them here. But they beat Williamstown to end the regular season. They took Independence down to the final possession. They've made these top teams sweat, so they're good.
Yeah, and I think the points you've made all year is going to come true in the postseason. Bluefield can't run the football.
Yeah. And
if you can't run the football, you really can't win the postseason. I mean, you can beat some teams in the regular season, but you can't win the postseason not be able to run the football. And that goes from Pee Wee all the way up to pro. And I think that's going to be the problem Bluefield's going to have, is they just can't run the football and can't control the clock.
Yeah. Now, again, we are working under these assumptions that these will be played.
Right.
So we're just going to preview them as we go. James Monroe at Independence. This one's interesting. Independence, obviously, really good on both sides of the ball. They could stand to really get healthy if there's a break. James Monroe had a bye 2 weeks ago, and they came in and they beat Bluefield. But defensively, we talked about all year, James Monroe is a very stout defensive team. They give teams some troubles. They do different things. They'll mix things up coverage-wise. Simpson, I don't know if he necessarily saw the field the greatest, or they just took different looks away. But James Monroe did a lot of too high coverages, taking a guy out of the box. I don't know if she'll be able to do that against Independence, because Independence can run the ball. They have a really good running back in Silas Nelson. So I'll be curious to see how James Monroe's defense can hold up against that. And can you get enough points to score? I know they do they've done a lot of window dressing to try to manufacture some offense.
Right.
But that still kind of remains to be the issue with James Monroe is, can you score enough points? Defensively, you feel decent about what they can do. it should be a tough matchup. It should be a really good
It should
matchup.
be real good. I kind of think it's going to be the Silas Nelson show. I really do. I mean, if he performs, I think Independence is going to be fine. If they can stop him, and I think just like they did at Bluefield, they may show Brock some things that he's never seen, and some some coverages he's not familiar with, and some surprises. I mean, it might make it a little tough for him. And so I think Independence is going to need to lean on that running game just a little bit. And if they can do it, I think they have a good shot. If they can stop the run and cause some confusion, for the freshman quarterback, who knows? I mean, we kind of wrote James Monroe off last week, so who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, Shady at Oak Hill, the AAA. So we got two local matchups. Really good for content stuff, but yeah, Shady at Oak Hill is pretty crazy. I do want to give a shout out to Oak Hill and their defense. The offense itself actually got over 30 points for the first time this year. Went up to University and won. So now these two teams, which honestly, I don't know if they're on each other's schedule for next year, but they should be playing just based on proximity and both of them being in AAA. So we'll see how that goes out. But if you're Shady, it's a really tough defense to go up against.
They had trouble with Wheeling Central and basically only had about 100 yards of total offense against Wheeling Central. I'm going to go ahead and say Oak Hill's defense is better than Wheeling Central, even though Wheeling Central's good. Mm-hmm. I've seen Oak Hill several times. That defense is brutal. They get after you, they chase you down, and they don't really give up much in the run game. I think Shady's really going to struggle offensively, and you kind of wonder maybe was University the breakout game for that offense just a little bit, to kind of break free and get some confidence just at the right time. I just think it's going to be a tough night for Shady.
Yeah, and you kind of add to that point, Oak Hill had, I think, 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns against University, maybe 4. But they also threw for 270 yards.
Yeah.
So they, kind of a balanced effort in moving the ball down the field. So yeah, it's extremely tough. And we talked about it. Shady secondary, they've been able to play and force turnovers. It's extremely hard to do that, especially in the situation wherever you get to the playoffs, where you have teams that are a little bit better and they're top seeded. So now you get the number 5 seed. You got to go to their place. A little bit more of a normal game. Shady, not this group of kids, but these coaches. They played Oak Hill for years, so they know exactly what to expect, and just kind of going up there and making it kind of a normal Friday game. But I think it's going to be hard for Shady to live off of turnovers, because I don't know if Oak Hill's going to give them a lot of opportunities to generate turnovers.
And I don't know if they've seen the stable of backs that Oak Hill's going to provide. And then when you try to figure out how to stop J.D. Moritz in that group, there's Devin Richardson, who is fast as lightning, who just
nobody has been able to sack or break down or stop.
But as good as Beckley's defense was that night, they were keying on Moritz, and Richardson, fakes it and runs it for 50-some yards. So I think that's the kind of thing Shady's going to be up against. And, I think speed-wise, Oak Hill's kind of got the advantage. I think they probably have the advantage in the trenches just a little bit. It's just going to be really tough. Shady's going to have to be really on their game, but I just don't think they got the horses to match up with Oak Hill. Oak Hill's legit number 5. There's no doubt about it. They're good. Yeah,
I think if you're Shady, the way I see that if they have any hope, I think their defense just has to continuously force turnovers, and I just don't know. I've been on record saying it. Forcing turnovers isn't a sustainable way to live, from year to year. I don't think it's sustainable to do in the playoffs. Yeah. But if they win, it's going to have to be on defense forcing turnovers and maybe getting a score, because I don't know. It's just a lot of teams outside of Princeton have had trouble scoring points on Oak Hill's defense, and I don't know if Shady's the one that has a solution. Maybe they do, but I have my doubts on this one.
I do too. Yeah, so, Oak Hill's good.
Yeah, next one I'm going to move on to. Beckley at Washington. We talked about it a little bit. This one was a bit of a turnover battle when they played in the regular season. I think A.J. Thomas had 2 interceptions in that game. Beckley threw 3 interceptions, still came away with a 20-17 win. One thing to note is I think Landon Jones came away with the game-winning sack or interception or something.
Touchdown, I think.
Yeah,
something like that.
He had some sort of impact in the game, but he's not available. Obviously, we talked about it. Had a season-ending injury. Right. How much does that impact what you're able to do if you're Beckley? Truthfully, I don't know a ton about Washington, But I do know that since that loss, they've won a lot of games, even given the forfeit against Spring Mills. But they seem to have put it together. So I'd imagine that you got two totally different teams than what you had when they matched up in the last week of August.
I kind of look for it to be real similar to the George Washington game. I mean, points are going to be at a premium. It's going to be hard to score. Turnovers are going to be magnified. Of course, Beckley's going to run it and run it and run it. But I just think Beckley's got to find something through the air, at some point, because you got to back up that defense just a little bit, or get some of them out of the box, or take advantage of an opportunity because there are so many people in the box. They're going to have to hit something through the air, I think, to kind of make a difference in this game. But I think it's just going to be a nail biter, come down to a key play here or there, and definitely turnovers are going to be magnified as always in this one.
Absolutely. So
odd time too, 7 o'clock on a Saturday.
Yeah. Really
bizarre.
So the last one that we have is Princeton at Robert C. Byrd. I don't know much about Princeton. I'm sorry, I know a lot about Princeton. I don't know much about Byrd at this point. That was the one matchup. Byrd, I think, ended up benefiting. Hampshire got kicked out.
Yeah.
So again, we'll see if that ends up being the matchup or if that game's even played. It's supposed to be another Saturday game at 4. If you're Princeton, just try to get out of there. Try to get out of there healthy. Yep. What's your status on Markel Lowe? If you feel like you can kind of hold him a little bit, maybe you do that. Again, that's more important. You need him for a semifinal and a state championship game more than what you do for this opening round playoff game. That's the luxury that you get by getting the number 1 seed. So, just try to go about it that way. And that's even if this game is even played. Who knows? Because that 16 seed in AAA is one of the controversial ones.
Right. I just think the top 4 in AAA. There's the top 4, and then there's way below on the top 4. And I just think that this is going to be a situation where Princeton just bullies them to death. I don't think Robert C. Byrd has any answers for them. Almost like kind of a AA team in RCB is. That's kind of pushed up into AAA, and Princeton's a pretty legit AAA school size-wise, and I just think it's going to be a bad night for Robert C. Byrd.
Absolutely. And last one is Meadow Bridge at Cameron. I saw Cameron last year in the playoffs. They played James Monroe, and they actually played James Monroe pretty tough little defense. And Meadow Bridge is coming off a loss. They had a chance to win and possibly secure a home playoff game. Yep. They didn't. Caden Sims was held to, I believe, his lowest rushing total of the season, 100 yards. Yep. Pretty high standards obviously set for him. I think he had a little bit of an injury, so we'll see what they can do. But outside of that, I don't know a ton about Cameron outside of what I saw last year, and I don't know how many of those kids are back.
Who did they beat at the end of the regular? Was it Pendleton they beat last week?
I think so.
They were pretty good too.
Yeah,
which speaks volumes.
Yeah, we were keeping an eye on that Pendleton game for Greenbrier West's sake.
Right. Meadow Bridge may be another team that if we do push this thing back a week, they may get some value out of that. Because Caden is a little tender with his leg, and that extra time, working. We used to call it the ice bath and all that stuff, but the rehabilitation and stuff like that. I think that would be would help him. But it's no secret, man. They just going to be. Caden needs to be good. For Meadow Bridge to be successful, Caden's got to be really good.
Absolutely. And again, who knows if we're even going to get these playoff games played this week. I remain doubtful. I think either everyone gets let in, but I don't know how you do that because there are teams that did not practice today. Like, all right, season's over. So we'll see. And then, girls basketball season open today. So if you got any injunctions, go ahead and file them now so we don't have to worry about them come March. Because I'm sure that's going to happen. It's going to be an injunction thing here and there, and there's going to be an injunction thing in baseball and softball.
We got to get this settled one way or the other now, because otherwise, you're right. Basketball is going to be the devil.
Yeah. So it's just insane. Hopefully we get through it. But we'll go ahead and move on to happier news, the Player of the Week winner. So we're recording this on Monday, and because we got the poll up a little bit later this week, we extended it into Tuesday. So we'll go ahead and explain our votes. I went with Brock Green, quarterback from Independence. You went with Devin Richardson, quarterback from Oak Hill. For me, I thought it was a really good performance for Green. Obviously saw him. We're kind of in the reverse situation of what we were, I think, in week 4, week 5, whenever you went with Thad Brown and I went with somebody else from the game that the other person covered. I thought it was just a good performance in Green. The historical meaning of it being able to break that passing yards record in 9 games in the regular season, something, when Trey Bowers had it. And it's also important to note that they had a Kennedy Award winner at running back who broke a points record that will probably never, ever fall.
Right.
But Bowers did it, I believe, in 13 games because they only played 9 games in the regular season that year. So to be able to do that, to throw 5 touchdown passes, I thought that it was a really stout and really good and a performance. And, to me, it gets my nod. But Richardson's not a bad pick either.
Yeah, Brock did a really good job that night. I was real impressed with I'm just impressed with his mental game. He just really, you don't seem like a freshman. But I've been a little hard on Devin this year, because I had some big expectations for him this year, and some of those games, he's left me kind of scratching my head just a little bit, and they were down 20-0, and we only get to watch spots of these things while we're covering games, and I'm like, wow, man, Oak Hill's in some big trouble, and then he basically brings them back. He almost throws for, I think it's 270-some yards. He threw 4, ran for 77 more, so he's basically got about 350 yards of total offense. By itself. So, and probably a lot of that set up those rushing touchdowns, So, I just think it was a big performance in a big place. It wasn't do or die by any means, but, we've been watching that offense saying, what's wrong? And then it kind of came to play when they needed it. So I thought it was a pretty solid performance by Devin.
Absolutely. So it's funny, we told you guys at the beginning of the year that the poll does actually resolve some of these things. Yeah. So whenever the poll goes final on Tuesday at 4 p.m., you'll get to see who the winner is between those two. Obviously the highest vote total. So, yeah, it should be fun. And this is the last one. Obviously, we'll carry it into football and basketball season. Carry it into basketball and the rest of the sports. Right. And you'll get to see a little bit more of that as we do the show. But, yeah, absolutely. Any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
I just hope we can get back to what's on the field. I'm tired of this injunctions and all that bull mess. I want to see games. I want the kids to play. And, we just saw some of the greatest things in the world this weekend with soccer. When we just let the kids play on the field, that's what this is all about.
Yeah, let's solve it on the court, not in the courts.
Exactly. Please.
Well, for my co-host Rusty Udy and our editor and producer Austin Sims, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Tyler Jackson, sports editor at Lootpress, and we'll see you next week.